What it shows invokes what is not shown. Meaning and memory in a photograph from the Falklands War in 1982. The Falklands War was not a television war, nor is it a conflict synonymous with combat photography. Common to earlier wars, British troops involved in the Falklands were ordered not to take cameras ashore with them, but like many others, Sergeant Graham Colbeck of 3 Para ignored this. Luckily for the Imperial War Museum, he also ignored instructions to hand in rolls of film after the war for checking, because according to those that did, they never saw their film again. On the night of 11th to 12th of June 1982, the 3rd Battalion of the Parachute Regiment fought what was to become the bloody slam battle of the Falklands War during the capture of Mount Longdon. Veterans' post-war memories of the battle were tainted by the publication of 2 books which allege actions that include the shooting of prisoners and the severing of body parts as battlefield trophies. These allegations are vehemently refuted by the majority of veterans, and a war crimes investigation resulted in no prosecutions. Nevertheless, these allegations have cast a long shadow over their memory of the battle, and this affects what they're prepared to talk about, who they're prepared to talk to, and the way in which the battle is remembered. This photograph was taken by Graham Colbeck the morning after the battle. The practice of using rifles to mark the location of battlefield casualties was the officially prescribed method of identifying the positions of the wounded during the battle. However, here, the placing of helmets on top of the rifles indicates the location of 2 or 3 Paras dead. The practice of erecting what is called a battlefield cross is believed to originate in the American Civil War, and has featured in photographs of the aftermath of battles ever since. The photograph therefore might seem to be just another example of a long-standing tradition. This would overlook the meaning of this photograph to fellow members of 3 Para. Crucially, the meaning of photographs is determined by the context of their creation and their use. Since the Battle of Mount Longdon was largely fought at night, preventing the one official press photographer present from taking any photographs, only images of the aftermath of the battle exist. This image is circulated annually around the anniversary of the battle on Facebook by former members of 3 Para, not just because of what it shows, because that is never explained with captioning, but what it represents. The selfless sacrifice of a man attempting to go to the aid of a colleague shot by a sniper, and who died in the process. Corporal Doc Murdoch was shot in the head by a sniper during 3 Para's nighttime assault, and his moans, calls for help, and conversations with himself as he was dying could be heard above the noise of battle for a protracted period by those in his immediate vicinity, and were picked up on the throat microphone of his radio and broadcast to other troops. Anybody who raised their head was shot at, and nobody could reach him as a consequence. When the situation became unbearable to listen to anymore, Private Stuart Lane rushed forward and was shot 3 times and died instantly. However, Murdoch took some time to die. My thesis examines the gap between the public memory of the war and how veterans compose and communicate their experiences. Composure was the term that the Popular Memory Group at Birmingham University originally coined in the 1980s to describe the process by which memories are made, including the interaction between private and public memories. They argued that memories are composed or constructed to make sense of past experiences and present lives. Drawing upon accepted cultural memories that leave the individual comfortable with their past and present, their memories conform to the accepted version of the past. In this way, individuals obtain a sense of psychological well-being or composure. Using concepts from psychoanalysis, the historian and sociologist Michael Roper argues that the composure of war memories of First World War veterans was not just determined by public histories, but was also a means of dealing with the psychic residues of the event. It is with this psychic residue in mind that I've interpreted this image. As already mentioned, whilst previous and subsequent conflicts were extensively photographed, media coverage of the Falklands War was comparatively limited. This was a consequence of direct government management, in-theatre censorship, and technical limitations affecting the transmission of material. Although the various armed forces mobilised some of their own photographers, only 2 press photographers accompanied the task force. Remarkably, only 202 photographic images were electronically transmitted back to Britain during the war, and most were routine military activities rather than of combat. Whilst Ministry of Defence management of the media during the Falklands War has been well documented, all history sources also reveal that the press photographers themselves chose not to photograph certain things. But even when they did, they were not always used. Tom Smith of Express newspapers, who accompanied 3 Para, expressed his frustration at discovering this on his return to the UK, noting that not one photograph of a body had been published. According to Smith, anything dramatic was put in a locker. As far as he was concerned, the published pictures were bullshit propaganda. The absence of violent action footage and the failure of newspapers to utilise available photographs are what David Morrison and Howard Tumber described as dead bodies, gore and red meat, inevitably led to a belief amongst those who reported on the war, and many who fought it, that the conflict had been deodorised. Moreover, the officially released images may be considered to represent a collectively produced cultural propaganda, since they ignored the reality of the experiences of the British Armed Forces. These factors emphasise the importance of the interpretation of the content and use of personal photographs taken by British Falklands War veterans themselves. I argue that the circulation of photographs on social media and how veterans engage with them via that medium illuminates both their meaning and their role in the perpetuation of a group identity, and the composure of the stories they tell about themselves and their experiences. It is also an example of how photographs can shape and represent personal and collective memories. In interpreting photographs, it is, however, necessary to reflect that all photographs are constructions rather than a copy of an observable reality. The photographer has chosen to focus on a particular subject and used a selected field of vision, angle and lighting to convey meaning. The examination of Colbeck's original photographic slide, held at the Imperial War Museum, reveals that it is actually underexposed and consequently so dark as to make its contents unclear. Consequently, only an image in which the lighting has been enhanced and the image cropped is ever circulated on social media, enabling the presence of shadows and the horizon to evoke memories of the first light after the battle and to make the focus of the photograph more explicit. I argue that the use of this image supports the writer and photography theorist John Berger's view that a photograph is a message about the event it records, and that what it shows invokes what is not shown. This image has developed an iconic status amongst British veterans of the battle, and its continuing use and circulation enables the tracing of a social biography of the image. Whilst the contents of this photograph and the story that it communicates provides the internal narrative, the social context in which it was produced and subsequently distributed reveals its external narrative. Together with contextual information, these narratives explain its continuing resonance with 3 Para veterans. But the image itself reveals less about the past than its use does about its meaning in the present. In my view, the use of Colbeck's photograph on social media may be interpreted as representing a key element of these veterans' memories of the Falklands War: grief at the death of friends and colleagues, and a loss of innocence regarding the reality of war. It is also a representation of individual sacrifice for the good of the group, and its circulation is a symbol of their desire to celebrate and perpetuate a bonded military identity. Most importantly, it represents the contrast between the public memory of an inevitable victory against an inferior enemy and the harsh reality and brutality of veterans' experiences revealed by my research. If the official photographs of the war did not show what the war had been like, then some taken by the soldiers themselves, I argue, became representative of what their experiences meant to them and what it was they wanted to be remembered, particularly since much of their battle was controversial and contested. Colbeck's photograph constantly encapsulates Michael Roper's view that composure is as much to do with the psychic needs of the present as it is of the past. Thank you.